right? One sheet is being created. But when you create a function, I mean, it doesn't create any sheet or anything. So various differences are there. So let's do one thing. I will, what I do is, the objects are there in the shared repository already. So I can directly use the shared repository. What are the objects there? Yeah, almost all the objects are there in the shared repository already. You have username, password. Yeah, so all the objects are already there. So let me create a new test now. New test name is, I'll say, the test name is what I'm doing. PIM EMP create 001. Create an employee. Okay, so only one action that we are going to have for now. And instead of, I mean, we still have to make every functionality reusable and indivisible. But this time, to make the functionalities reusable and indivisible, we are not going to use the actions. We are going to use the functions. Okay. So very first thing that what I'm doing is, I don't associate the repository to the functions. What I'll be doing? I'll be associating the repository to the actions, and I will be calling the, which repository it is? It's orange. I'm associating the repository to the action. Okay. Now if I call the function in this action, function will start, will automatically use the repository associated to the action. But an action cannot do that. If you call an action in this action, the call, whatever the action that you have called, that called action cannot use the repository associated to this action. You have to associate the repository for this action as well as the action which you have called. But for a function, it is not like that. If you call the function in action 1, the function will use the repository which is associated for the action 1. So no separate association required for the function. That's one thing. Also, when you are using a data table, local sheet and all, there will be two local sheets. If you call an action, another action in this action 1, for this action, one local sheet will be there. For the action what you call, another local sheet will be there. But when you call a function in this action, if you have referred as local sheet in the function, what it will do, which local sheet it will be using? The local sheet of the action 1. So that means for function, no separate assets are there. Different assets will not be there for the function. Function will start utilizing the assets of the action, in which action that you have called that particular function. That's one of the key difference between a function and action. Okay, so remember. Okay, so what I'll do is, now we'll start creating one by one function. And another difference between that, inside a function you cannot store the action. You cannot create the action inside the function, but you can create and you can store the functions inside the actions. Okay. First one is, I'll say this. I'll change the scripting part a little bit. Now, this is what something that you have to practice from now onwards. This time what we'll be doing is, we'll go with the complete scenario now, including some bit validations as well. Okay, so bit of validations. Let's just understand the manual test case for a while. If the manual test case, what is the first step of the manual test case? Launch the application. For every step there will be a validation, right? For every step there will be a validation. So when you launch the application, what is the validation? The application should be launched and the login page has to be displayed, right? Then when you say the login page has been displayed, how do you verify that login page has been displayed? A simple thing. Now when you're doing manual testing based on the page whatever is displayed, you can. But when you say when you're doing automation cannot see the entire page like how you are seeing it. Okay, there is a simple technique to say whether it is navigated to particular page or not. One of the validation is, okay, so here what is the validation? Well, as soon as I launch the application, then it has to navigate to the login page. That's it. So how do you verify the login page has been displayed or not? Login button is displayed. Simple thing. How do you say you are in Paris? Simple technique. How do you say you are in Paris now? If you see Eiffel Tower, you are in Paris. How do you say you are in Hyderabad? If you see Charminar, you are in Hyderabad. Right? So there will be a landmark of that particular place. Right? You will be having a landmark. Then okay, so there are a lot of other things will be there, but other things might be common between the cities. But you need to take a landmark which is specific to that particular city. Then that will be your validation there. Okay, so if that has arrived, or if you see that, then you are in that particular place, right? For every city there will be a landmark that is unique to that particular place, right? So a landmark is nothing but an object there. So what you see now, if that object is exist, if that landmark is exist, then you are at the right place, right? So that's what that even we do in the real life. So the here also it will be the same thing. You Whenever you need to verify whether you are in a right page or it's navigated to right page or not, you need to take an object which is specific to that particular page only, or which appears only in that page, which doesn't come in another page, which is unique to that particular page. So if that object is exist, then you are in the right page. But if that object does not exist, then you are not in the right page, right? So it's very simple thing. Okay, now when you take the login page, which is unique in the login page, maybe username comes only in the login page, the password comes only in the login page, or login button comes only in the login page. Those objects will not come anywhere else in this application, right? So if you want to verify whether you are in the login page or you are not in the login page, then what you can do, you can verify if the username object exists. If username object appears or exists, then you are in the login page. Or password field exists, you are in the login page. Or login button exists, then you are in the login page. But you don't need to validate all three. If you can take one object and then see if that object exists, then you are in the right page, right? So now what I have to do, as soon as I launch the application, as soon as I launch the browser, and I navigate to a specific URL, then very first thing that what I have to do is I just need to verify whether the login page of the application has been displayed or not. To verify login page has been displayed, then you have to verify for one of the object like this, either username or password or login button. Okay, now first what I do is always, don't directly write the script inside the function. First you write the script in the action, you check whether that code works or not. After the code is working, then you convert the code into the function. Okay, always that's a better way. Okay, right. So how do you launch the application now? System.run, and as of now I hard code the value again, browser, comma, URL. I'll say http professional.demo.orange.hrm dot, right? Now I'm just running the script. It has launched the browser and it should navigate. It's navigated, but my script should say that. I should not say manually. My script should say that it's navigating. So again, what I said, I need to verify whether this object exists or not. To check whether this object is exist or not with the script, first you need to add this object to the repository. But we have already created the repository in the object repository manager. You can open that. But I'm not sure whether this object is already added to the repository or this object needs to be added, because the repository has been created some time back already. So I don't know whether this object has been already added to the repository or not. So what I'm doing now is I'm opening the object repository manager. The repository manager, object repository manager, is used to manage the shared repository, like adding the objects to shared repository, creating shared repository, modifying the shared repository, or some other things are there. Okay, but whenever you want to manage the shared repository, then you can use repository manager. So I'm opening the repository which has been created. I'll say recent files, and this is the repository. Now I don't know whether this object has been added or not. So if you want to verify whether the object has been added or not, to verify that, just enable editing first. And can you see one option? What is that? Locate in repository. You click on locate in repository and you just click on the object in the application and click on OK. It says that cannot locate this object in the object repository. That means that this object was not there. Actually it is there. See here, it's there, but why it is not able to locate? Highlighting, and then okay, that's fine. So it's not able to locate, but somehow there could be some problem. Cannot locate this object in the repository. Okay, so there could be some problem, that's okay. But when you look at that and when you click on this, when you click on the object, if that object is found in the repository, it will automatically highlight that in the repository. But it's not working for now. I'll look at the reasons for it. But other option is just to select the object, click on highlight, and you can see that object is being highlighted. That means that this object, which object it is? TXT username. So that means this object is there in the repository. Now, so what I have to do is, after launching the application, I need to verify whether that object is exist or not. Obviously, that is a condition, right? Object should exist. So that you need to write inside the condition. You say browser dot page hierarchy, complete hierarchy need to follow. What is the hierarchy of it? Browser.page.webedit of txt username. What you have to do? You have to verify whether it is exist or not, right? So you have a method called exist. But that exist method is not only for the username field. Exist method is available for every object. Okay. But what that exist method does exactly? Exist method checks whether that object is currently exist or not in that hierarchy. Object is appeared or not. It returns true or false. Exist method returns true or false. If the object exists, if the object is being identified, then exist method returns true. If the object doesn't exist, or exist will return false in two situations. One is with the properties what we have provided, more than one object is matching. If multiple objects are matching with the information what I have given, it returns false. If no object is matching with the information what I have given, it returns false. But if the object is identified uniquely, then it returns true. Okay. Now you say if exist equal to true, what does it mean? If exist returns true, that's what it means. But in fact, if you are checking for the true, you don't need to give equal to true. You can just write only till exist. If you don't write equal to true, by default it will be equal to true. It will check for the true only. Okay. Whenever you say just if variable something like that, by default it will be equal to true. It will be checking for equal to true. And if that username field exists, what should I do? I need to pass that step, right? Okay, so far, whenever we are doing some validation, any validation it could be, to say whether it is pass or it is fail, what's the condition there, we were using message boxes, right? In the message box, we are displaying, right, the output. But if you display in the message box, will that result get stored? Result will not get stored. But when you do a testing, the result should not be temporary display. The result has to be stored and the result has to be shared with different people, right? So which means that okay, you should not display the report in the message box. The output or the validation result should not be displayed in the message box. The validation, once after you do the validation, then whatever the report that you want to display there, whatever the report like pass or fail or whatever the statement it is, then the statement has to be, every statement has to be stored. Every statement has to be stored. So that means, okay, once after the execution is completed, I need to see a final report with every step in that report. What steps that I have validated and what is the validation result for each step. Then how would you do that? So that means I need to write the report. No more message boxes. No more message boxes now. Okay. Fine. So how would you do that? Is okay. We have something called reporter dot report event. We have an object called a reporter, method called report event. Okay. So please note down that reporter dot report event. The method name is reporter dot report event. Okay. So this method is used to write the execution result. Write the execution result to the EFT report. Okay. So there will be total 4 inputs for this. Okay, so don't take too much serious now. That is slowly, because when you write more and more, you will automatically understand it. The first input is whether you want to pass it, fail it, or warning or just a message. To pass it, you write as make pass. To fail, you write it as make fail. Okay, and you have two more things like make fail and make warning and make done. MIC stands for Mercury Interactive Class. MIC stands for Mercury Interactive Class because earlier the QTP was from Mercury Interactive. So most of the methods and classes and all, they have given their name earlier Mercury Interactive. So MI stands for Mercury Interactive and C stands for class. Report event, you say make pass. Then 3 more inputs are, last one is optional. Second input for this method is the step that what you have executed. What is the step? Launch the application. This is the step that you have executed. And the next one is description. Description is nothing but actual result here. Actual result. If the application is, if that object is exist, what is the actual result? Application has been launched, right? So that is should come in the report. There is fourth input, but that is optional. I'm not giving as of now, and I will explain you whenever the situation comes. How do you write the report? You say reported dot report event space is mandatory, and make pass should be given without double quote, comma, name of the step what you have executed, and actual result. Remember, don't make the grammatical mistakes and spelling mistakes, and also the report what you write should be understandable. Should not write a single word statement there, because the report, if you write a single word statement and all, probably you can understand it, but this report and all will not be validated by you, and the report might be validated by somebody else. So they should not only that you understand that report, others also should understand that report. So that's the reason whenever you are writing the report, maybe they might not be able to understand the script, but at least they should be able to understand the report, whoever validating. So that's the reason reporting is always key part. Else, if exist returns true, you pass it, else fail it, right? So what I'm doing, again you say reporter.report event make fail, comma, step what you have executed is launch the application, then application was not launched. So application was not launched. Now in case if the application is not launched, will you be able to continue with the execution? You will not be able to continue with the execution, right? So the remaining flow is depending on this particular step. All the remaining steps of remaining flow is depending on this completely. So when the remaining flow is depending on this, if this step fails, then there is no point of continuing. What should you do now? In case if this step fails, then you need to stop the execution here itself. No, you need to ask your script to stop the execution here. You can't continue because no, there is no use of continuing because the remaining flow completely depending on this. If login page doesn't display, then all remaining actions cannot be done. So unnecessarily all the steps will be failed. Instead of failing all the steps, what you do, you fail the step and then you stop here. Say that remaining steps are depending on this. Then how do you stop the execution? Not manually you need to stop, because when you are running the script, you will not be there for the system. You might be there or you might not be there. But even though you are not there, the script execution should be automatically stopped whenever it fails. So how do you stop? How do you ask your script to stop there? Then we have a statement called exit run. Statement name is exit run. Remember, there is no space. Exit run is a single word and it is not case sensitive. There is no space there. Exit run is a single statement. Exit run, VB script has got different method. Exit run is the EFT method here. Exit run is a statement which will be used to stop the execution. Okay, right. Now, if you run the script, okay, so it says that it's not, login page is not displayed, right? Login page is not displayed. Let's see what will happen now. The script has to be failed, right? Script should be failed now because login page is not displayed, but no message has come. But you go to view last run results. To see the results, you go to view last run results. But for most of the people, as soon as you run, result file might be already opened, right? Automatically opens. But for me, it's not opening because I've done some setting saying that don't open the report automatically. Okay, go to view and last run results. You can see the script has been failed. And if you open the report, you can see that launch the application. This step has been failed, and you can see the report application was not launched. This is the report. Okay, that will be given by EFT. Okay, now if we say I'll just connect to the network, probably I'm not sure. Now the application has been launched and script has been executed. Go to view last run results. Application has been launched. So you can see that the script has been passed now, right? Okay, now this piece of code needs to be reused, right? Almost in every script that you need. Earlier what we did is we kept this in one action, but I said now because action has got a lot of dependencies further and I don't want to use the actions, but instead of using the actions, I want to make everything into the function. So I want to convert this into the function. So what I'm doing now, I'll just make this as a function. You say function, I'll make this as a launch application. Now, when you say you are to reuse this, are you going to reuse this function only with the same browser and same URL every time? No, right? The URL and browser will be keep changing, right? So you need to define that. You need to define the browser and URL when you are calling the function, or maybe when you are executing it, right? Okay. So that's the reason. Since you get this, two things will be changing. I'm not directly giving that browser and URL inside the function. I'm not hard coding it. But what I'm doing now, I'm giving through the arguments. I'm giving through function arguments. comma str your str your, right? Okay, now whatever you give to str browser, that will be coming here. Whatever you give to str url while calling the function, that comes here. Now whenever you are calling a function, you say like this, call, or you say launch application. str browser is nothing but you give. Still you should not hard code this also, because here also it will be keep changing. If you hard code it, every time you need to come here and you need to change it, but we are going to parameterize this also. Orange hrm, like that. That's it. Now if you run this, execute it, right? And again, now okay, so I made this as a function, but where the function has been stored, where I've created the function in action 1, right? But are you going to use this function only for action 1, or are you going to use it in another scripts also? Only in this test. This function, okay, you have got in every test case, in every script, you need to launch the application, right? So launch application is needed for all the scripts. But if you keep this function in this action, will you be able to reuse it in another scripts? You can't. If you keep the function in an action, that function will be called as local function to the action. Got what I'm saying here? If you keep a function inside the action, then that function will be treated as a, or called as a local function to the action. When a function is local to the action, if you want to see that, go to view toolbox, look at the launch application function where it has been displayed under local functions. When a function is local to the action, that function can be used only in that particular action. But how would I reuse? Just go back to the repository now. If I wanted to use the objects, whatever I have added to the repository, if I wanted to use those objects in other actions also, or in other tests, what did I do? I stored them in the shared repository, right? And I saved that shared repository externally, stored externally. Then wherever I want to use those objects, I associated the shared repository and then use it. Is that what I'm doing now? Okay. Same thing now. If you want to reuse the function in other actions, if you want to reuse that function in another scripts, what you have to do, you should not keep that function within the action. But what you have to do, you need to keep it externally, but not in the repository. Repository is only for the objects. But where do we keep the functions? That's called function library. You have to create another file that's called function library. But you're going to create multiple function libraries and all, and keep the functions in the library. Library will be external. You save the library in external location. Then wherever you want to use those functions, what you have to do? You need to associate those libraries to the script. When you associate those libraries to the script, then those functions, whatever you have stored in those libraries, will be available for the script. Simple. People who know Java little bit, they might be knowing about jars. What is mean by jar? Jar is nothing but a resource, a library. So inside jar there will be class, there will be methods and all defined. If you want to use the class and methods inside the jar, then what you have to do, you need to add that jar as a reference, right? So similarly in the .NET you will have to use DLLs like that. So in the same way, in EFT also, you can create a lot of methods, a lot of functions and all. Then if you want to use those methods in another scripts, not only in this particular script, if you want to use these methods in another scripts also, then what you have to do, you should not keep those functions in one script. What you have to do, you need to keep those functions in an external file called as a function library. External file called as function library. Then how do you create the function library and how do you store the functions? But one library doesn't mean only one function, but we have only one function now and I'm going to store one function only, but doesn't mean that only one function can be stored in the library. You can store multiple functions in the library. Okay, now how do you create a library and then how do you move the function into the library? How would you do that? Okay, so to create a library, you have multiple options, but one of the option I'm telling right now, you say go to file, new, and can you see something called function library, or just in the toolbar go to and just click on the new drop down and say new function library, or you can also create a function library through a notepad also. Okay, and a function library can be in three different extensions here. In .NET extension will be DLL. In Java extension would be jar, and here the extension can be in three ways. I mean three different extensions it support. Here itself it is there. What are the extensions? One is QFL, second one is VBS, third one is TXT. VBS you already know. We have seen a lot of VB script already. We have executed the VB script, so it's same VBS files. QFL stands for Quick Test Function Library. Q stands for Quick Test, F stands for Function, L stands for Library. Quick Test Function Library. Okay, so you can give any of this extension, either QFL or VBS or TXT. But ideally we prefer to use VBS. But why we prefer to VBS, you will slowly understand that. Okay, so you slowly understand that. If you create the function library from UFT, by default the extension will be given as QFL. Okay, so what you do is now to create a library, just what I'm doing, say new function library, and first you select the path where the library has to be stored, and what I'm doing, I'm just going to G drive, UFT. Under UFT I'm creating one more folder called libraries or function libraries folder, like that, and you give the name of the library, and I'll say like common functions. You can give a different name, but why I have given only common functions? Wait, you understand, but you also give name as common functions. Now I have not given any extension. I have not given any extension. If you don't give any extension, by default QFL. But if you want to make it as VBS, you have to say common functions.VBS. If you don't give any extension while giving the name, then by default it will be taken as QFL extension. Remember. Now what you do? First you create a new library. Library has been created. Then what you do? Copy the function, cut the function from action, paste it in the library. You know what I did? Created the function in the action, then I created a library, but don't create the library every time for every function. Since I don't have any library existing right now, I just created, but next functions and all, instead of creating a new library, you need to copy to the existing library only. So that means next time onwards you need to open the library and then you need to paste the functions. But this time, since okay, I didn't have any library existing already, then I created a new library. So one library can have multiple functions. Okay, now what I did is whatever the function, that this function, right, launch application, where this application is function now, just let me remove that. Where the function is now, function is there in the library. Where the library is stored, external to the test, right, outside the test, right. So outside the test in a separate folder. Now if I call the function like this, now launch application, I'll say like this, two arguments are there, comma, second one is HTTP, okay. If I call this application now, sorry, if I call this function now, will that function executed? Why? Because the function has been created, right? Earlier it be executed also. Earlier the function, it was executed because function was there in the action only, so it was able to call. But now the where the function is, function is not there in the test, function is not there in that script. Function has been stored in a library. The library is saved outside the EFT, completely outside the script. Now how the script can understand that this function is stored in that library and you need to call from that library? Cannot understand, right? Because the library has been completely saved outside, so that it cannot understand. Then what should I do? If I want to use the objects in a shared repository, what I was doing, I was associating the shared repository, right? Similarly, what you need to do, if you want to call the functions from a library, first the library has to be associated to the script. If the library is associated to the script, then only the functions what you have stored in the library will be available to the script. Okay. So the question is now, how a function library can be associated to the script, right? Now, how do you do that? To associate the function library to the test, you go to file, settings, and then can you see something called resources here? Let me repeat the hierarchy, path, file, settings, resources. That in the resources you see that associated function libraries section. You just click on add and then browse for the library. Common functions.vbs. Select that library, click on open. But if any message comes, just click on no for now. Okay, no need to understand that message for now. Click on no and apply. Okay. The library has been associated. Now where the launch application has come? Not in the local functions, library functions. What is the difference between local functions and library functions? Any idea? Local functions nothing but functions stored inside the action, that's called local. Library functions nothing but functions which loaded from the library, okay, which are loaded from external library, that's a library functions. Now if you execute that, now function is being executed, right? Okay, now it executed. If you look at that, if you go inside the function, I have used some of the objects inside the function. Where these objects have been stored? In the shared repository. Did I associate the shared repository to this function? Or not associated the shared repository to the function? But for what I have associated that shared repository? For action I have associated, right? So this function started using the repository which is associated for the action. But an action cannot do that. When you call an action, then that action, external action, cannot do that. When you want to use the objects in an action, you have to associate the repository for that action only. But library function will not demand you to associate any repository. So no dependency, right? No dependency. So that's what exactly, one of that's the reason functions are being little faster, because functions will be alone. It will come alone. But as soon as you call a function inside the action, whatever is available for action 1, function will start using everything which is available for the action 1. Okay, so it takes a little time to understand that, because if you use more functions and more actions, then you will understand in detail. Okay, now again I have hard coded the browser and URL, right? But I should not hard code it. What should I do now? I need to parameterize it. So again I will use the data table now. Data table, I'll say browser, I'll say URL. Which sheet I'm using here? Global sheet. I'm using global sheet. Now, where this browser and URL have been stored? Now, this function needs 2 arguments. What are those 2 arguments? One is browser, second one is URL, right? From where the browser has to be passed? Browser should be taken from here. URL should be taken from here. So 2 arguments, the values of 2 arguments should be coming from, one is from browser, second one is from URL. Now we have 2 options. One is you create one variable str browser equal to data table dot value of, you don't need to say dd global sheet because it's in the global sheet now. The second argument is optional. Now you can refer the URL here. So for that URL, sorry, for this variable, from where the value is coming? From the data table. But if you say that no, why should I create unnecessary line, then what you can do, you can directly refer here. So whatever the value returned by this method, the value will be passed to the argument automatically, right? Second one is URL. Second argument is URL. That's it. Execute it. I'll change the browser now. So it has been executed. It's open Internet Explorer. So if I change this browser now, then it's changing. That means parameterizing now. Okay, now launch application function is ready. What is the next step? You need to log in. So log in, what are the actions that you need to do first? First you need to enter username, then you need to enter password, then you need to click on login button. Right? Okay, so I'm writing the script again for that. Dot web edit of txt username dot set admin browser dot page dot web edit of txt password dot set admin browser dot page dot web button of login dot click. I've done that. Now after logging in, what you have to do? The second step of the manual test case is enter username, password and click on login button. What is the validation of it? Okay, maybe login is not being identified. Property has been a little bit changed. So we have to verify login is successful or not, right? This is a known issue because the property has been changed a little bit. No need to understand that now. You will understand the error message a little later. Yeah. Now next you need to verify login is successful or not. How would you verify login is successful or not? Which one? If this link is exist, welcome link is exist, login is successful. Because other links might come or might not come. Depends on the credentials that what you use. Other links might come or might not come, but this link will come for every credentials. So if you want to verify whether the login is successful or not, then what you have to do? You need to verify whether this link is exist or not. See whether that link is there in the repository or not. Welcome admin. Yeah, that link is added to the repository already. So what you do now? You need to verify that link is exist or not. Browser dot page dot what is that object? Link of welcome admin dot exist. Keyboard has got some problem. Okay. So if that welcome link, welcome admin link exists, then what does it mean? Login is successful. If that link does not exist, login is not successful. So what you do? Report event because if it is exist. Step is login to the application. You say login is successful. Else you say report event fail. Login to the application. Login was not successful. In case if the login is not successful, remaining lines of code cannot be executed, right? So again I say exit run. Now let me execute this. It has been executed and see the final result. View last and results. Log into the application. Login is successful. Launch the application. Application has been 2 steps have been passed. Now in case if you give wrong credentials, let's see what will happen. I will give a wrong password there. Let me run the application again. Sorry, script again. Now the login is not successful. So that welcome link is not displayed, right? Or not hasn't come. Now execute it and see what will be the result. What happened? Launch the application, login to the application has been failed. Login was not successful. Right? Because why it's failed? Because of login was failed actually. So why it is saying as failed? Because this link was not exist. When this link exists, then it will say it's passed. Okay, now login is applicable only for this particular action, or login is applicable everywhere? Login is needed for almost all the scripts, right? So that's the reason what I do. I will make this also a function. Function login. That could be a sub procedure as well. Not mandated to be a function, because you are not taking any return from it. Now, are you going to log in with the same user and same password every time? Password also I will give as comma str username comma str password. So whatever you give to the str username will be coming here. Whatever you give to the password, then it will be coming. Now what I have to do? I should not keep this login function in this action, because login is not applicable only for this particular action. Login is applicable for all the scripts in the future also. So what should I do now? I need to keep it in the library, but I don't want to create a new library now. I've created a library, right? So instead of creating a new library and pasting the function in that library, then what you do? File, open function library, common functions, open that, and then you paste it. Now how many functions I've got in this library? 2 functions. Like this we are going to create more and more. Right. You don't need to reassociate the library. Once you have associated, that will be fine. Okay, if you add any new function, that function will automatically available here. So what should you do next? You need to call the login function. Say login str username. Are you going to log in with the same username again? I should not hard code it. So then what I do? I will parameterize this. Then it's a data table dot value of username, data table dot value of password. Login data table dot value of username, data table dot value of password. Now let me execute that. Application has been launched. Username cannot be empty, because wait a moment, I've given the empty value here. I'll say admin. Now you run it. Right? Okay, login also done. I'm parameterizing from data table. Next, once after you login, what should you do? You need to create the employee. You need to create the employee. Right? Probably logout also needed. So let's do one thing. First, I will write for logout, and then I will, again logout also needed for every action. So once that function is ready, then we will write for remaining script in between. So for logout, first I need to have a login. Logout is done. For logout, what you have to do, you need to click on welcome admin link and then you need to click on logout. How do you browser.page.link of? First you need to click on welcome admin dot click. Then you need to dot page dot link of logout dot click. Then once after logout, you need to close the browser. Browser dot close. Now this also needed for every script, right? So what I'm doing now, I'll say function logout. This is the use of the functions. Why we have learned the functions and all in the VB script? Because of this. See how why you are using the functions to make every code reusable. Right? This is the need of the functions normally. Now what you do? This function also need to be reused in all the scripts, right? So that's the reason what I'm doing. Logout function also I'll be moving to the now we say logout. We can just use the parentheses or not required parentheses also. Now I've got three functions: launch application, login, and logout. But if you look at that, see if you have done for these three, if you have created three actions, then what you would have done? It should have created three sheets, right? Three additional sheets. But is it creating three sheets now? No. No additional sheets are being created. Also, you should have associated that shared repository to all these three actions, right? You should have done mandatorily. Then only these actions will use that repository. But now, are you associating that shared repository to every function? No, you are just associated the repository to only for action one now, where you are calling those functions. So those functions are using the repository associated to the action one. That means you are associating only to the parent action. You don't need to associate the repository to every function. But when you are using the actions, what should have done? What you should have done? You should have associated that shared repository for every action that what you are calling, every action that what you have created. Then for every action that what you have created, one local sheet would have been created, right? Whenever you call it, then that action would bring the local sheet and that action would bring the repository associated for it and created for it everything. But now function is not like that. No additional sheet being created, no additional repository is being created, and no need to associate the repository for every function. Right? No dependencies, no additional assets for the function. So that's the reason functions, since there are no much dependencies on the function, then function would be a little faster compared with the actions, right? This makes the difference between an action and function normally. Very important interview question. This is what's the difference between a function and an action. Okay. So this is the main reason why we prefer to use the functions in the reality than actions, because the functions will have very less dependencies compared with the actions, and the functions will be more reusable than actions. Okay. Now fine. I got for launch application. I got for login. I got for logout. That's it. Okay, so close browser also has been closed. Now what you have to do, you need to write the script for remaining flow. So remaining flow is like this. You need to create an employee. So I said create an employee, but create an employee has got a lot of combinations. What are the combinations? in the create employee, you have the test cases like this. Let me open the Excel because we will go for traceability directly. So I'll create traceability on the coverage matrix. I'll say rename the automation coverage. I'll say manual test case, then automation status, then automation script. Which script has been covered this manual test case. Now what are the manual test cases you have in this? Then you say, just I will write some of the manual test cases we have. Create EMP 001, create an employee without credentials. Two, with credentials. With user defined employee ID. With the credentials with disabled status. Okay, with disabled status. With duplicate employee ID. Duplicate username. With one or more mandatory fields empty. So you're creating a more, I mean, you've got more test cases here. Okay, so total how many? 7 test cases that you have got. Maybe you still have more combinations, maybe. But as of now, I've written 7. Now you have two options here. One is you write one automation script for one manual test case, or second option is with one automation script you cover all manual test cases or more manual test cases. That means with less amount of scripts you give more coverage. Okay, with, I mean, if you say that no one-to-one mapping that I need one manual test case and one automation script, for one manual test case you write one automation script. Okay, but the right approach is one automation script could cover more manual, so with less scripting more coverage that you can provide, right? How would you do that? By adding more conditions, right? By doing data driven. That's where the parameterization will be given more value. Okay, see what I will be doing now is here I'll write the script. First we'll write the script. I mean, I will write for end-to-end flow. I mean, the complete, what are the fields that we have, every field I will touch except the attachment, the image attachment. I will touch every field. First let me run the script. Okay, first what I have to do, I need to click on PIM link, then I need to click on add employee link, then I need to Enter first name, middle name, last name, employee ID with credentials. Checkbox should be selected. Username, password, confirm password, status, and location. Okay, now let's take one by one test case now. How the first test case should be executed? Employee without credentials. When you say employee without credentials, the basic combination this is basic combination. You need to enter first name, you need to enter last name, you need to select the location, you click on save button. For first test case, only what are the events need to be performed? First name. Only this. Now second test case is with credentials. When you say with credentials, you need to enter first name, you need to enter last name, and you need to perform this. You need to select username, you need to enter password, confirm password, status should be enabled. Then you need to select the location, click on save button. Right? So that means this is an additional thing that has come. So if you are executing with the credentials, then only this piece of code need to be executed. These events need to be executed. When you create without credentials, then that piece of code should be ignored. Right? Those events need to be ignored. Now, create an employee with user defined employee ID. Now what you have to do? Enter this, and you remove the default employee ID. You need to enter this employee ID. You need to perform this, and you need to perform this, and you need to perform this. So when you say with user defined employee ID, then this is the additional event that you need to perform. Right? Okay. Next. When you say with disabled status, you need to enter this, you need to enter this, keep the default employee ID, and you need to perform this also, and the status has to be selected as disabled, and this is common, and save. But additional login need to be performed, right? And when you say duplicate employee ID, here you need to enter this as well, but you need to enter the employee ID which is already exist. Duplicate username, you need to enter this as well. I mean, you need to select with the credentials, but you need to enter the employee name which has been already given for another employee. Right? So that means that, see, almost the same functionality that you are executing, but sometimes for some test cases you are ignoring some fields, for some test cases you are performing those events, all events or maybe some of the events. Right? So the flow is almost similar. Right? So that's the reason what I'll do, how I will manage that is by using parameterization I will manage that. Okay, but first what I'll do, I will write the script, and then how we can do that I'll do. Then you can see the real usage of the parameterization. First I need to add the objects to the repository. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the objects to the repository. First what I need to do, I need to click on PIM link. So I'm adding that object to the repository. It is adding another page. Why? Wait a moment. Let's go to wait. It should not add as an underscore 2. Setting is common. That's okay. I'll change it. Wait. Say PAM, still adding underscore 2. Property is also same. Why this is being. Just wait. Okay. Then, so since I've added all the objects to the repository now, then I can start writing the script. Okay. So what I have to do, very first thing, after login, first thing that what I need to do, I need to click on PAM. For now, I'm just not adding the validation, but after that, I will update the script with validations. First, you have to say click on PAM link. So I said link dot click. Next, you need to click on add employee. Next, you have to click on. You have to enter the first name. Page dot web edit of first name dot set. I'll say str first name for now. Then you say browser dot page dot web edit of middle name dot set str middle name. Then you say browser dot page dot web edit of last name dot set str last name dot web edit of employee id. That's it. Stremp id. Dot. Next, you need to select with the credentials checkbox, right? That is a web checkbox. You call it as. How do you select a checkbox? Dot on. Set on means selecting a checkbox. Set off means unselecting the checkbox. On not in uppercase, but you can give in any case, no problem. But on must be given within double quote. Next is you need to enter the username. Web edit of username dot set str new username. I will say browser. You need to set the password dot web edit of password user underscore password dot set str new password dot web edit of. You need to enter confirm password repassword dot set str same password. Then you have to select the status dot no, it is web list, right? List box. You need to select from the list. You have got the method called select. Then I'll say str status. Then I'm just using the variable. After that, what you have to do, you need to select the location. Then location also list. Location dot select. Then you say str location. Then after that, you have to click on save button. So it's a button dot save dot. Okay, now I have done that. But this code should not be executed straightforward always. Not every time I need to perform all the events, right? So what I do now is in the data table, I'm parameterizing from data table again. For one field, I'm creating one parameter. I'll say first name. Then I'll say middle name. Then I'll say last name. Then I'll say employee ID. Then I'll say with credentials. I'll give another field called with credentials. Then now you have to give emp username, then emp password, Confirm password, nothing but same. Password and confirm password would be same. Then you have status. Then you have. So for every field I have created one parameter. Now see what I do is, first name should be coming from here. Middle name should be coming from here. Last name would be coming from here. And employee ID would be coming from here. But now what I do is, how I manage my script. If I want to create with default employee ID, what I do, I will give empty value here. I will ask my script saying that if I provide empty value here, you keep the same employee ID which is populated. If I don't keep empty value here, if I give some value in the employee ID parameter, that means that you should not keep the default one. You have to take the one what I have given. Right? So what I'm doing now? So what I do now is, I'll do like this. str employee ID equal to data table dot value of employee ID. Now if trim of this is not equal to empty, if not equal to empty, then only you set the employee ID what I have given, otherwise you keep it to the default. Right? Now I can manage two test cases here, with default employee ID, with user defined employee ID. With if I want to execute with user defined employee ID, I will give employee ID here. If I want to keep default employee ID, I can give here like this. Now again, this should be executed, these events till status, these 4 steps, right? Total 5 steps. These 5 steps should be executed when only when I want to create with the credentials, right? Okay. So what I do now, I have created one more parameter called with credentials. Now this I will give yes or no. With the credentials, yes means I want to create with credentials. No means without credentials, right? So now by using this parameter, I can manage two, with credentials and without credentials. So what I do now is, I'll say like this: BLN with credentials, sorry, data table dot value of with credentials. If this is equal to yes, then only you perform this. Right? With just a simple condition. Now this piece of code needs to be executed only when I give yes here. Then when I give yes, remaining username and password that I need to provide. Right? Now if I want to create with duplicate employee ID, I will provide the employee ID value there, but I will give the employee ID which is already existing. So that whatever I give here, it will take the same employee ID and then pass that. Since I give a duplicate employee ID in the parameter, then it will enter the duplicate employee ID there. And if I want to create with the duplicate username, I will give yes here. I will give username which is already existing. So whatever I give here, it will take that. Right? Now see, when this is being executed, when this condition executes, you cover the test case with user defined employee ID. When this condition doesn't execute, you cover the test case without, with the default employee ID. When this condition executes, you cover the test case with the credentials. When this condition doesn't execute, you cover the test case without credentials. This is why the conditional statements we have learned. Why we have learned the conditional statements? Because of this. Now How we can cover the test case? See this. How I can cover multiple test cases. What I'm giving now, test middle name empty can be set. I'll give. Now employee ID I will give empty. With credentials no. So that means without credentials. Status and all not required. I'll say Texas R&D. Now what fields will be entered? Only first last name, sorry, middle first name, last name, location will be entered. With credentials will not be entered. Employee ID will not be entered. Nothing but the first test case. Now I will cover second test case like this. Same data. What is the second test case? With the credentials. With the credentials as yes, but okay, I've pasted in wrong. Okay, fine. Now, so you have to say with the credentials as yes, yes. Then username is you can give some username. Test user 1 2 something like that. Test 1 2 3 something like that. You can pass test at 1 2 3 4 and status as enabled. Now single script, this also has been covered. Now since I have stored 2 rows in the global sheet, script will be executed 2 times. First time this test case, second combination is nothing but this test case. Right, you don't need to write 2 scripts now. Single script, then covering multiple test cases. Now another one is what I do. I'll give this, and this time what I do, credentials with disable status. Then this would be covering with the credentials with the disabled status. Then I will copy another test case. This I will give, and with the credentials no, but employee ID I will give some employee ID. That means this time it should enter the employee ID which I have provided, not duplicate one. This one with user defined employee ID, right? With 4 combinations of data, 4 manual test cases, single script. Why you need to store multiple combinations of data? Because every combination is nothing but 1 manual test case. Now we can see that with a single script how many test cases you are covering. But with the 4, and you can still cover duplicate employee ID, duplicate username, but you need to change the validations. Validations need to be changed a little bit. That we will see next. If I execute the script, how many times script will be executed? 4 times. 4 times 4 different combinations will be executed. Right? That is the real use of the parameterization. Right? If you don't parameterize and if you hard code, what will happen? Now with single execution, you can execute 4 test cases. With single execution, if you just click on run once, then 4 manual test cases will be covered. But if you don't parameterize, if you hard code it, then what you have to do? For first test case, you need to write the data, run it. Then again, you need to change the combination into 4 times. You need to run 4 times. You need to change the data, which will consume a lot of time. But with this approach, then what you can do? With a single execution, with a single script, then multiple manual test cases will be covered. Right? So, with less scripting, more coverage. What the approach what you have done is data driven approach. That's this approach is called as data driven approach. Script looks normal and script looks conditional there, but based on the data what you provide, then the script will be executing accordingly. If you keep one field as empty, something will not be executed. If you keep one parameter as no, then certain values, certain events will not be executed. If we keep it as yes, certain events will be executed. Right? So why should we do the parameterization? This is the reason. Okay. So like this, what you can do by adding some more conditions, you can also do the negative. Negative things I have not added. Okay. So if you run the script, how many times it will be executed? 4 times it will be executed. 4 combinations will be tested. Right? Okay. So if you want to see that, let us execute that code now. Let's see. Now I'll just run the code. But if you run it 4 times, how many times browser will be launched? 4 times. How many times login will happen? 4 times. Location dot select. I'm not taking the values into the parameters. Data table dot value of data table dot value of emp underscore username, emp underscore password, emp underscore password, then status, emp first name, right? Then employee ID I'm getting here, right? Employee ID I'm already getting, right? So I'm taking the employee ID here. Here, instead of using additional variable, I directly pass here. But since I need to use these 2 places, one is for validation, one is for passing. I'm taking into variable and then I'm using it. Okay. Now you run it. So now again, see the flow will be executed end to end. First, it will launch, login, and create employee logout. But should it log in and should it launch the application, login and logout for all 4 times? But login is common in every flow, right? So what you need to do is now launch application has been failed. Maybe somewhere the problem could be. Okay, logout. Actually, I have not commented. When you say we are executing this flow, launch, no need to perform all 4 times. Login, no need to perform all 4 times. What it should do? Launch should happen only once. Login should happen only once. But create employee should happen based on number of combinations I have used. Logout should be happening at the end. That means that only this flow need to be executed multiple times. But this should be happening only once. Logout should be happening only once. But if you use like this, then what will happen? Since 4 rows are used, entire script will be executed for 4 times. That's the reason launch and login will be happening on 4 times. But how do you manage that? Okay, that we'll see tomorrow. Okay, but just got the use of the parameterization now. See, when you do the parameterization, this is what the flexibility. You can cover the script with more combinations. More combinations you cover, that means more coverage that you provide, right? More test cases that you can, right? So with, I mean, you don't need to execute for multiple times. With one execution, more coverage. Right now, you have to create the traceability like this. Now, what you do? This has been automated. This has been automated. This has been automated. This has been automated for all for one test case. What is a test case? Automation script name emp underscore create pm underscore emp underscore create underscore 001. This is the script. This is just a traceability, which manual test case is covered by which automation script. Once after you complete your automation script for any of the test case, then this traceability that should be updated. Why should you update this traceability? Because tomorrow whenever you want to do the regression testing, right, whenever the release comes, you have to perform the regression testing. When you want to perform the regression testing, first manual team, what manual team does is, first manual team will identify the scope. What are the test cases need to be executed as part of the regression. So first they will give you the manual test cases saying that, okay, for this release, these are the test cases which should be executed for regression. And as soon as they give the manual test case list for you, first you go to this traceability sheet matrix, then you see how many manual, whatever the test cases they have given, out of those manual test cases, how many have been automated and which scripts or for that particular manual, which scripts are created for that manual, these manual test cases. Then what you do, whatever the list they have given, you identify respected automation scripts, you execute those automation scripts. Okay, so that's for traceability, which manual test case is covered by, how many manual test cases have been automated, how many, what are the automation scripts created for those manual test cases. Tomorrow if they give the manual test cases that need to be executed, it will be easy for you to understand which automation scripts need to be executed for those automation, sorry, those manual test cases, which automation scripts should be executed for which manual test case. That's a traceability. Okay, that's how the things will happen in the reality. Tomorrow we will see some more things in the parameterization, like how would you manage only certain part need to be looped, not entire code need to be executed, only certain part need to be looped. How you can manage that, tomorrow we'll see that. Okay, going into bit complex maybe.